Welcome everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to those of you that could tune in to my show. I appreciate it. My name is Earl Mann, and we're going to get started here in just a moment. Doing this broadcast from my home in Bowie, Maryland. If anybody doesn't know me, where I live in Bowie, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. And I truly do thank you for tuning in to my show. This is live, by the way, obviously. I'm talking to you. What I think I'll do, though, is this is interactive. This won't be an interactive presentation so much, I don't think, anyway. Kind of really don't know. But I'm not planning on it being so interactive, but I will welcome you to the broadcast if you'd like to let me know who you are. You can just type your name in below, first name or last name or city or state or anything like that. And I will right in the beginning of this just give you a personal hello. All right, man. Doug Hart, welcome to the broadcast. I know you are from Chicago. All right. Welcome to the broadcast. Connie B, welcome to the broadcast. Oh, nice. Chuck Ellis, welcome to the broadcast. Welcome everybody. Again, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into this broadcast. You're actually helping me. I'm actually trying to win a contest. There's a company out there called Comment 5, and they have a contest of people putting on their personal shows. So lots of people are doing shows and a lot of different things. So I'm real busy, so I didn't have time to really kind of create a show. But I thought what I'd do is I came up with an idea that intrigued me. So I said, you know what, that's good enough. That's good enough for me to do a show on. So I'm actually going to just share with you. I'm calling the name of this show is 3 Bad Days. I should have created a slide that had a little thing. I didn't have time to do that either. Afterthought, right? But welcome, Marcia from Delaware. Welcome to the broadcast. Again, if anybody's tuning in, we're going to start here in about a minute. I know I scheduled an hour. Not sure it's going to take that long. Probably not. I don't know. You know, it's funny because I'm going to share. It's very biographical. However you conjugate that word. I'm just going to share my three. I'm going to share three bad days, possibly 3 of the worst days in my 45 years of walking this earth. And but I'm also going to share perspective a little bit, and actually more important than my perspective, I'm going to give you insight into I think it's going to be pretty clear how those days have shaped my perspective, and hopefully you get something out of it. I don't know. You know, it's always interesting to hear other people's kind of travel. So that's basically what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to start here in about a minute or so. I'd like to welcome everybody to the broadcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Actually, I didn't expect to have this many people kind of tune in, but that's cool. That's always a good thing. So this is what we're going to do. Again, for those of you that don't know me, because I may have some people that just saw I posted it out on Facebook and you may not know me personally, I now live in Bowie, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. But I grew up in a small town of South Carolina, and that's going to be part of, I'll start you there and kind of walk you through the story a little bit. Thank you everybody so much for tuning in. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to probably start on the next minute mark. Just, I don't know, it just seems like a thing to do. It seems funny starting like halfway between minutes. I don't know. Totally, this is totally for fun, folks. There's no agenda, no hidden agenda here. There's no, I'm not going to sneak a sales presentation on you or have you adopt anything. There's nothing here, but I'm just going to tell you a couple stories about me and where I come from. And I really do hope, though, I've told one of the stories I've told a bit for people that have been in any of my leadership trainings. Most of these I've never really told. There are very few people on the planet that actually know all of this stuff I'm going to share. So very few people that know all these stories and together, and very few people that know them, any of them individually as well. So this is kind of a first. Kind of curious to see how it goes myself, actually. All right, so here we go. Oh man. Chuck, I was wondering if that was you. So we got a guy, friend of mine that's tuned in. I haven't seen in, wow, maybe 15 years. I don't know how long it's been, Chuck. You'd have to help me out on that, but it's been quite a while. It's been way back in, I guess, TBS days. So that was 18 plus years. Wow, man, somebody's getting old, Chuck. I don't think it's me though. Yeah, it's both of us, right? Oh man, thanks for tuning in, man. Oh man, that took me back there. You know, Al Trimble is still in the area, so maybe we'll reconnect after all of this. Let me do this, folks. I'm going to jump right in now. It's 5 after, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the title of this show, and there is no formal presentation or anything like that. I'm hoping that's not what you were expecting, because that's not what you're going to get. So I'm going to kind of just walk you through 3 very significant days in my life. 3 very significant days in my life. I'm going to try to set up the circumstances so you fully kind of understand how I could perceive those days as being so bad possibly, or so meaningful, because you know perspective is everything. You may hear my bad days and maybe compared to your life you won't think they're so bad, or maybe you hear my bad days and say, oh my gosh, who knows. But I do know this, that everybody's different, and you know it's almost impossible to truly walk. I know the proverb says, you know, or the advice says, you know, walk, you know, until you walk the 100 miles or 1,000 miles in somebody else's shoes. Kind of don't judge them. Well, it's impossible to do that. You're never going to walk in somebody else's shoes. So it's almost impossible to understand truly how somebody really feels. So that's not the intent either. But I'm going to start now. Alberto, you're the last person I'm going to give a special hello to. All right, guys. So here we go. So let me set up this first thing. So just a little bit about me. I'm going to weave. It's part of the story. So I grew up in a small town in South Carolina, down on the coast. It's actually where Paris Island is, where Marines are made. Hoorah, right, Chuck? It's a very famous place in Marine Corps lore, right? Because that's one of the most famous boot camps is there. And I grew up there because my father retired from the Marine Corps, and you know, we were right there. He stayed there, and you know, that whole thing was a big part of influence on my life as well. So I went to high school there. Did really well in high school. I mean, I was very active and did really well. You know, I played 3 sports. I played football, basketball, track. I lettered in all those 3 sports. I also was in the choir, in the marching band, on the art club, was class president for my junior class. Just did a lot. I was really active and really busy. I graduated, you know, okay. I was number 33 out of 300 plus students, so that's decent. But all the time growing up, I used to always tell my mother when she was getting on me about study hard, study more, study more, study hard. You know how parents are, right? Doing the right thing. And I had perfect parents. I used to always tell her, Mom, don't worry about it, because she's not going to have to pay for college anyway. You know, I was a little confident / cocky, I guess. I figured between academics and sports, somehow I'd find a way to get a scholarship of some sort. So I told her that for years growing up. Junior high, high school, you know, I still had to study, but obviously I said, hey, you're not going to have to pay for school anyway. So you know, when I was in high school, I'm fairly patriotic as well, plus having a big Marine Corps influence on me, all the military people around me. The military as a career seemed to be a pretty cool thing, and I thought being an officer would be a great thing, because you know that's a well-respected profession and accomplishment where I come from. And so I looked at the military services, and I tried to get a military scholarship. And although I had great grades and all that other stuff, my SAT scores weren't high enough to qualify for a naval scholarship. And I wanted to go in the Navy because ultimately I wanted to either be a Navy fighter pilot or a Marine Corps fighter pilot. That's what I wanted to do. So the Navy was kind of where I was trying to go, and I just didn't have the SAT scores to get me in. So there was this program, this Navy recruiter came, pulled me in, and was talking to me and, you know, selling me on joining the Navy. And then he told me, once he found out I wanted to be an officer and pilot and all that other stuff, he told me about this program where it was designed just for people like me, you know, that had great grades and all that, but the SAT scores, their fundamentals just weren't good enough, I guess, to get high enough scores on SAT to qualify. So there was this prep school program called BOOST, Broadened Opportunity Officer Selection and Training Program, BOOST program, that, you know, the way it worked was you enlist in the Navy, and then you go to boot camp in the Navy, and then after boot camp they send you to this prep school for about 9-10 months, almost a year long. It's very, very hard, very intensive, but it's designed to rapidly bring you up to par academically so that you could then retake the SATs. Your score should be improved enough for you to then qualify for a Navy scholarship. So against the wishes of my parents, who did not want me to enlist in the military because they were totally willing to send me to college. In fact, I was accepted in every school I applied to. Almost got a scholarship at the Citadel, which is a military organization down in South Carolina. I was an alternate, but that wasn't good enough for me. I told my parents they weren't going to pay, and darn it, they weren't going to pay. But they were totally willing to pay, and I, against their wishes, decided to take this boost program. And I figured, you know, I could just go to this program. So I did. I enlisted, went to boot camp, and I joined this prep school. And I'm in this prep school, and this prep school is really hard. Really hard prep school with really hard, you know, it was both academic and a bunch of military stuff weaved into a school. But it was very intense, and all you had to do to make it through this program, other than, you know, it was designed to get your test scores up, but you also had to pass the program. And the minimum bar, you had to make at least a 75% in every course that you took. If you didn't make it ever 75, you would go to an academic review board. They had our whole school session was broken into quarters, and so 4 times they had these academic review boards, where if you fell below 75% in any class, you would go to this review board, and then they would decide if you could stay in the program or put you on probation, and you had to, you know, get your grades up before the next academic review board. So I'm in the school, I'm doing my best, you know, I'm doing okay, I'm doing all right, I'm making it through. I'm not, you know, knocking the doors off, but I'm doing all right, you know. Not the best student there, but above that watermark and everything there. And some people that were there, you know, were going to academic review boards every single time. You know, the first one they were there, the second one they were at, you know, they got put on probation, they had to go back to the next one because there was a different class. And these were people, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, look at the stress these people are going through, not knowing if they're going to make it through the program. Well, I made it to the very last academic review board, and guess what? I got a 73. I got a 73 in math. So I'm thinking to myself, crap, this sucks. Now I'm going to have to go to this academic review board. They're going to be all over me, you know. They're going to put me on probation. That sucks, you know. You're going to have to go to these after, you know. You also have to go to these tutoring sessions and all that. So I wasn't really looking forward to it, but, you know, hey, at least I made it to the last one, right? I know people that have gone to every single one. Now, what I didn't know what was going on in the background, there was a new woman that came into that school system and took over an administrative position. Not like a principal, but something like that. To this day, I don't know what her role was. But she was on that academic review board. And I went to my academic review board, and I stood before this panel of people, and they asked me about my courses and why I made the 73, and they were giving me a hard time as I expected. And then this woman speaks up, this brand new woman who was only there maybe 4 or 5 weeks before this whole board thing happened, last one of the year. And she just jumps in and she says, well, Mr. Mann, I see you've been here for a while. You've been doing okay. You haven't been knocking the doors off, but you have, up until this point, you've been exceeding the minimum requirements. But I got to tell you, I don't think you're college material. This is what she said. I don't think you're college material, and I'm recommending you for disenrollment. We're ending your tour here. She kicked me out. She called it quits. She said she just didn't think I was college material. Needless to say, I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know what to respond. I mean, I knew people that had gone to 2 and 3 of these academic review boards, and they were still there. They got put on probation and all this stuff. I go to the very last one, the last one before graduation. I'm 2 points down in math. That's all it is, 2 freaking points. There's probably one test, one answer right on some test somewhere. And this woman says, I'm not college material. She recommends me for disenrollment, and guess what? They disenrolled me. So here comes day number 1, worst day of my life. Now, realizing what kind of student I was, and realizing what kind of parents I have, and realizing why I was even there in the first place, I had to make this very first phone call home to explain to my parents that I didn't make it, that I got kicked out. So I called my parents up, and basically there's no way to hide that, right? I basically just told them, hey, we had this academic review board, my test scores wasn't high enough, they kicked me out. So my parents being perfect parents, were supportive and said, hey, don't worry about it. You figure something out. You still find a way to make the best of this. Don't worry about it. But I could hear the disappointment in their voice. I could hear the fear and stress in their voice. I could hear them saying what they knew they needed to say, but I could tell how they felt, and that was day one. I can't even tell you how much that day hurt me to make that phone call. So that was day number one. And the only silver lining in this whole situation, because remember I enlisted, I had 4 years to go in this Navy program. The only silver lining was because I had such strong academics, and obviously I was en route to be an officer and all this different stuff, they let us kind of take different tests to see what we could do. And I tested, I actually tested for a pretty exclusive program, crypto stuff. I had to go to language school first. So, the only silver lining was at least I got to go to this kind of special school. So I packed up my bags, left that program. I'm going in a different direction in my life now. I'm headed to Monterey, California, and I'm in the Defense Language Institute. And this is another, I forgot how long that program was designed to be, 6 or 7 months long program, super intensive language, total immersion program where you learn a language and learn how to do some stuff with the language. And it's a privilege to be there, very small classes, blah blah blah. So there I am, I'm there, I'm doing my thing, I'm learning Spanish, I'm doing well. In fact, I kind of like it a little bit, and I'm thinking to myself, I'll turn this thing around, I'll figure it out, I'll find a way to make good. And then I realized that, hey, all I really still need to do is take the SAT, because you can apply from the Navy, from the fleet. You can apply for a scholarship from the fleet. So all I really needed to do, I finished the program. I'd done what I intended to do, right? I went through the whole program. I didn't graduate, but I still went through the whole program. I knew my test scores would be up. I knew I was college material. I knew the lady was wrong. All I needed to do was take the SATs, get great scores. Boom! I'm out of here. I'm in college come fall, just like I planned on doing. Spring, just like I planned on being there. So I'm all fired up and excited now. And I run to, I go to the advisor, and I say, hey, you know what? I really came into the Navy, and I tell her my story, right? I really came into the Navy to, I saw my lights just blink as a storm. I want to make sure that my internet connection wasn't lost. But I go to this lady, and I say, wow, my lights are really blinking. Let me see if they're going to hang in there. Okay. So I go to my advisor, and I say, look, I'm really in the Navy to be an officer. I'm not, I understand this language because it's great. I feel great, honored to be here, but I really came in to be an officer. It's Saturday, it was a Friday or something like that. I needed permission to miss class one day to go take the SAT so that I could get this thing on track. And the lady looked at me and said, "Scheming man, the government is spending over $100 grand on you to be in this school with all the background checks and all that stuff." I don't know if that's accurate or not. I'm just telling you what she told me because it's like she's sitting in front of me now. And she told me, the government's spending all this money on you to be here. A lot of people trying to be here that couldn't because you're here. No, what I suggest you do is just pay attention to your coursework, make it through this course, do what you're here to do, and you worry about doing that officer college thing later. And I was obviously a little pissed off about that. So I go back to my room and I sit down, and then I think to myself, wait a minute. If they're not even willing to let me go take the test because they've put so much of an investment in me, what's going to happen after I finish this course and after they've made this full investment in me? They're not going to just let me not go do what they've just trained me to do. They're going to say, then I need to go do that for a couple of years and then go do the officer thing. And it suddenly dawned on me that it wasn't going to work. I wasn't going to get there. This was not going to be a path to get me to what I thought I wanted. This wasn't going to work. It just wasn't going to work out. So I made a very juvenile decision to just rebel. I just stopped doing my work. So I'd literally go to class. This is crazy, and not recommended. But I went to class and I just sat there and just didn't do anything. And the teacher was like, "Well, what's wrong? What's wrong? What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just not really into this right now. I'm just, I'm here. I'm just, I'd kind of make my way through it." But I was obviously mad, right? And 18 years old. So anyway, you can't do that for long without having them sending you to the office. So they send me to the office, and this time it's I've been there now a month and a half or so. So this was a month and a half after my first worst day, maybe 2 months or so. Been there for a while, doing well. I'm well into this program. So I go there, and there's a Marine Corps colonel who's in charge of this. He's like the XO of the school. I don't even know what his role was. But then he asked me, "What's the problem?" He's looking at my reports. He says, "Son, looks like you've been doing a great job, and all of a sudden you hit a wall. What happened?" And I said, "Well," and then I told him the whole story, how I really came in. He would relate, right, because he's an officer. He would understand. So I said, "Hey, really came in this, in the military to be an officer. I want to fight, a fighter pilot. Blah, I didn't make it through, but I know I can make it. All I have to do is take this SAT scores, and boom, there we go." So they didn't let me take my SAT scores, so I got a little, I kind of rocked my motivation a little bit. And he looked at me, just looked at me, and then he said, "Son, we'll see how motivated you are chipping paint on a ship in the middle of the Indian Ocean. I'm kicking you out of here." So, needless to say, day number 2, had to make that phone call home again to the same perfect parents to explain the same situation, not more than 3-4 months after this first phone call that I'm sure turned their whole life upside down. Here I am on the other end of the phone again, explaining, didn't make it, kicked out. Worst day number 2. So, needless to say, I'm dazed. I'm just really dazed. I'm starting now to second guess my confidence level is rocked like it's never been before. And I was extremely confident kid. That's why I wanted to tell you the high school piece, so you know where I was coming from mentally. I was extremely confident. And here I am checking on board an LST in San Diego, a non-designated seaman. I don't have a job. I'm just enlisted in. So I show up on this Navy ship. I report in, and they bring up the guy that over the division. I was in 1st Division. And this guy shows up, Chief Graham, supposedly former SEAL. Very hard and tough man. In fact, when he shook my hand, he said, oh, soft hands. We know where to send you. Chemo! He called this guy named Chemo, who ultimately became one of my best friends on the ship. But Chemo showed up, and Chemo was another hard dude, big, no expression. And he looked at me, and he looked at Chemo, and he told Chemo, "Take him to the ghetto." Like, what? Did he just say ghetto? That's what they called this place, this division they were sending me to. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what has happened? Where am I? So I make it down to this room in the bottom of the ship, and I don't know if for those of you that don't know anything about ships are gray. But underneath the gray is the paint, gray paint, is primer. They prime the paint before they paint it, and it's orange. And these were the guys responsible for repainting the ship, and they were going through an overhaul. So during the day, they were standing away down to the primer, and it creates this orange dust. So I walk down into the belly of this ship, They don't know what's going on. This guy just says, "Take him to the ghetto." He was a very hard, mean man. I don't know where I'm at. I walk into this room, and this room is full of orange people. Everybody's orange. And they're just sitting there with a 1,000-yard stare. It looked like somebody had just worked the life out of them. Nobody had any expression. Nobody had any, was he talking to anybody? There was no conversation. They were just sitting there staring into nowhere. Orange people, except for the eyes where they wore goggles. They were like orange raccoons. And I wasn't in this room 10 minutes before the officer busts in, yelling and screaming at everybody. I guess somebody had done something wrong, yelling and screaming at everybody. He's stepping across everybody, and there's a little TV mounted on the wall. He grabs the TV, and he yanks the TV off the wall, pops the cards, and yelling and screaming, and walks out of the room. But that's not the shocking thing. The shocking thing was that the orange raccoons didn't move, didn't say anything. They had no emotional response to that whole thing that just happened. And now I'm really starting to wonder, oh my God, where am I? What have I done? And now I sit down, and the guy across the bunk from me, who turned out to be a really bad dude, because this room was full of people that now, you know, a lot of people in this part of the division, they in this part of the Navy, they were there because they were given an option in the civilian world, this or jail type of thing, if you can understand all of that. That's how it works still. Sat down in front of this guy, and he reaches underneath his bunk or whatever in this little plastic bag, and he pulls out a joint, believe it or not, and he looks up at me and says, "Do you mind?" Do I mind? I'm like, nah, I don't mind. What? Needless to say, my life was upside down, turned around, spin. I was in the middle of the tornado, lost. It was, I didn't know, I'm 18, and I went from being the golden child to sitting amongst raccoon men with no life in their eyes. So I'm thinking there, I'm lying at night, I'm thinking, my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then it dawns on me, wait a minute, you can still take the test. You can still take the test. I knew the dates, right? I'd memorized the dates that the tests were given. You can still take the test and go pass the test, get the scores, get the scholarship, and you're out of here. That's all you got to do. So I talked to the people, hey, what do I need to do? They said, oh, you're going to have to get permission from Chief Graham to go leave the ship on a work day. And by the way, he hates officers. But you know what? I did it. I walked up to him in the middle of the work day and said, I was like 2 days or 2 or 3 days there. I'm brand new. Just not even, you know, still not going to work. But I walked up to him and I said, Chief Graham, this is the deal. And I told him the story. I told him I needed to go. This was the final time I could take this test and get it in time for the review board and the scholarship and all this other stuff. And he looked at me like, officer, you want to be a what? And of course he yelled and screamed and, you know, all of that stuff. But he let me go. He let me go. So I went. I took the test. I came back to the ship. You know, it took about, I forgot how long, 8, 9 weeks for the results to come back. So I'm working this job with these guys, and it's the hardest physical job I have ever had, still to this day. And I'm thinking it, but I'm just thinking to myself, you know what, I can just make it 6 to 8 weeks. I can do that. I can do anything for 6 to 8 weeks. I can do it for 6 weeks. And then finally the day comes and I get a letter. I'm on the ship. We get a letter, mail call. Letter comes from the Department of the Navy. And I know what it is. It's the results. It's the results for that Naval ROTC program, that scholarship. That's what it is. It's the results. And I open up this envelope and I look at the results and I read it from the Department of the Navy. And they say, thank you for applying to the NROTC program, proud of the Navy, blah, 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 blah. We appreciate your status. But competition was very steep this year, and unfortunately, there's not a spot for you. Please try again next year. This was the first time I think in my life up until that point that I actually physically felt doubt. Huge doubt. Massive mountains worth of doubt. Because now I didn't know. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe the teachers had it wrong. Maybe I only did well because I was from a small school. I had all these stories started to go through my mind. Maybe. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm thinking I got 3 years left now because almost a year had gone by now. What am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? So I'm just working and I'm still lost. I'm just working. I'm working this dog. I'm working this job. I have no life, no point, no purpose, no direction. I shouldn't be there. I just shouldn't be there. I'm thinking about, when my parents said they would still send me. They don't have to do it this way. They would have sent me to school. I'm thinking about what I would have been doing now. Packing my bags, getting ready to go to college. All this stuff is going through my head. And anyway, one night, I'm lying in my rack. That's a bed. That's what we call it. I'm lying in my rack. And I get a lightning bolt of an idea of a movement. I'm so angry. I pull out a yellow legal pad. So pissed off. I'm mad at everything and everybody. I was probably mad at you. Didn't even know you. I was pissed off. I was mad. I was an angry man. And I pulled out a yellow pad. And I made the most defiant gesture, movement, shift in my mind, change in my heart, shift in my fundamental DNA that I've ever made, still to this day. I said, forget y'all. Didn't even know who y'all was. I said, I'll do it myself. And I wrote at the top of that yellow pad, the 20 grand plan. Because that's how much I thought it would cost me to go to college. I said, I'll do it myself. And I pulled out a calculator, and I looked at my little money I was making as an E1 in the Navy, and I figured out, I had 3 years, how could I save enough money to go to school on my own? And the answer was yes. All I had to do was save every penny I made except for $62 a paycheck. If I did that, if I could stick to that, I would get my 20 grand. So fine. Done deal. That's what I did. I wrote it down and I planned it out and I knew where I'd make my whatever, and by the time I got out the Navy I would have $20,000 and I would do it myself. Then I flipped over the page and did one of the most enlightened things I have ever done in my entire existence. I said, not only will I go to do it on my own, I'm not going to even wait because I should be in college now. So I'm going to go to college now. I'm going to create my own college. And I wrote at the type of page 2, Mann University. And then I just imagined what I thought college was. I had no idea what you did there, but I just made up what I thought it was. And I wrote down the stuff that I thought I would need to learn if I went to college. I wrote down, math, English, science, history. I just guessed at it. And then what I did was I took my $62 every 2 weeks, and one of those 2 weeks I went to the bookstore and bought my university books. I picked one of the subjects and I bought a math book or I bought a history book. And I had math, history, science. I also added in some things like philosophy, religion, those things. And I just went to the bookstore and I came home with a little stack of books. I couldn't buy many, had $62. I still had to, go out and town. I didn't have to buy food. I lived on the ship and that stuff and didn't have to pay rent. So $62 was doable. I just couldn't do anything, social or fun. Fine. So here I am in Mann University. And then I had another brilliant idea. I'm starting to roll with these brilliant ideas now because it's me now. It's up to me to do it. So I'm going to figure it out. So then I came up with this great idea when I stood on watch. When you stood on watch, it was like a 4-hour period. You stood an hour at a time, and you do nothing but just stand there on the ship. You stand there and look to make sure nobody falls over. You got binoculars, that type of thing. Then I came up with another idea, a way to even cheat, a way to get ahead, to even be more prepared. I'll show them. So anytime I was standing with somebody on watch, I would just ask them, hey, did you ever go to college? And if they said yes, not graduate from college, did you ever just go to college? If they said yes, then I said, really? Great. Teach me something. And they looked at me like I was the oddest guy. What do you mean teach you something? I said, well, didn't you went to college, right? And they would say, yeah. Some of them like, yeah, I graduated, I have a degree. I said, well, great. Teach me something you learned. They're like, what? I'm like, anything. Anything you know that you can teach me, just teach me something. We got an hour. We don't have anything else to do. You got something else? You can. You're not going anywhere. Can you please teach me something? We're not going anywhere. And you know, it's funny because that became a kind of a novelty to them. They were like, well, let me think about it. And then some people kind of got into the spirit of that a little bit. So I had people, one guy was trying to teach me differential equations. One guy was trying to teach me Adam Smith and economics. Another guy, you know, people that started to whatever they could remember. They just, hey, okay, I got an hour. I'll give you a little, I remember this one thing. So they started to teach me all this little off-the-wall stuff. Of course, there was no cohesiveness between what everybody was teaching me. But I was learning something. And in my mind, I was just getting ready to show them the world. Because when I go there, I'm going to kill it. No, you're not going to stop me. I'm unstoppable, right? I'm thinking, well, whatever. I'm defiant. I'm doing this thing. I'm a rebel. So I'm doing this thing at Earl Mann University and all this other stuff. And I'm doing this for a while. And then I come up with a better idea. Good ideas on the road. And I said, well, you know what? If I allow myself just a little bit more money beyond my $62, I can pay to go to school at night. Go to night school, go to an actual college, a night school. So I did that. I enrolled in a school, and then I started going to this night school. And it was a challenge to go to this night school because for me to get to class, I had to, right at the end of work, I had to catch a bus, a shuttle from the ship to downtown San Diego. I had to get a bus across town San Diego, get a transfer to go out to the suburbs of San Diego somewhere and go to this little class. And then do the reverse and come all the way back. It was like a 2-hour evolution to get to class. And one of the first classes I took was something had to do with computer, basics of computer science or something like that. And it was a self-paced course right up my alley. I can just crush and just do as much as I can. So I used to do all that stuff, get to this class and spend all much time looking at my clock, making sure that I stayed as long as I possibly could to catch the very last bus that would get me back in time to catch the transfer, to get me back downtown in time to catch the shuttle, to get me back to the ship in time. And I'd get back to the ship, 1 o'clock at night or whatever it was, and I finally got back to the ship. And I did that thing, that craziness. I did it because I was motivated. I did it. And I remember some nights waking up on that bus, I'd fall asleep, and I'd wake up in a panic because I didn't know if I had passed my bus stop, and if I did pass my bus stop, I didn't have any extra cash. You know how it is when you try, I didn't have extra. I couldn't get a cab back. So, I'd wake up and I'd just stare out the window, looking to recognize something so that I know I still hadn't missed my spot. And I would always be so relieved when I saw something I recognized and realized that my stop was still ahead of me. So I did this thing, and I'm doing this thing, and I'm doing well. I'm taking these classes down to another class. I'm just doing this thing. I'm just in it. I'm just in it to win it. And then it dawns on me, you know what? I take this test again. Now I got college degrees and all this stuff, so I go through all that. I take the test and all that other stuff. And, about 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, whatever, I get a letter back from the Department of the Navy. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Now I'm on a track now. I got my scores are even better than they were. I've got college credits because those even make your package better because you're already in college, and I was making A's and B's in these courses I was taking. And then I get the letter back, and guess what? Same letter, same exact letter. Sorry, competition's tough. Try again next year. I'm like, crap. This is whatever. But this time it didn't hurt me as much because I had a 20-grand plan anyway. I didn't need them. And the next year I'm doing the same thing, same thing. And then something interesting happened. I decided didn't even want to go that route anymore. I'm gonna just do my time, get my 20 grand, get all my college courses, and go to college and do it on my own. But then the NRTC people, I don't know what you call that review board, called the captain of my ship. And they said, well, what did y'all do to Seaman Mann? He told me the story because I had to go see him eventually. But they called him and said, what did y'all do to Seaman Mann? And the captain obviously was totally, what are y'all talking about? Who is Seaman Mann and what are you talking about? Anyway, they told him, here you got a guy that every year he's been submitting his package. Every year his package is getting better and better and better. And then this year he takes the SAT and doesn't submit the application. What did you do to him? What did your people do to him to discourage him? Now, obviously, the captain didn't have to do anything to me. He didn't even know I was trying to do all this. So he calls me up, asking me, is this true? Do you want to be an officer? And I'm like, well, by then I didn't even care. Because, I had another plan. I was in another direction. And quite honestly, I wasn't convinced I could be an officer, right? Because obviously look at where I was, right, and what I was doing. And I said, well, yes, sir, that was the plan. And then he said, well, you know what, this is what we're going to do, senior man. You need to go submit your application. And I'm going to have my officers take you out of that deck department and start to have you rotate around through every part of the ship so you can learn all the different ways, the different things about how the ship's and engineering and operations and radars and all that stuff. So you can kind of start to build a foundation if that's what you're going to be, an officer. And I'm like, okay, sir, that's fine. So he sent me through, and I went home. I went, did the thing, went submit my application, but I wasn't going to make it. But hey, it took me out of deck department, which was great because, gosh, I was getting my butt kicked down there, working so hard. But by then, we were all friends, and I was a ghetto guy. I mean, I was cool down there. We were all cool, hard working. That's just where I was, and maybe that's who I was. So I'm there. So I find, I go home on leave, and I'm home on leave. It was on the holiday season, and I'm home on leave with my family. And I realized that, the results should be back from the selection board. And I say it out loud, and my father's in the car, and he just kind of driving, and we pass a Navy recruiting station. I said, well, they probably have the results at the recruiting station. And he's like, really? Yeah. I was like, yeah. I said, we should stop and see. They probably have a list. And my father it was kind of funny because he was a little bit reluctant about even going in there. He was like, don't worry about it. We want you. But I knew why he was reluctant, because he didn't want to have to constantly do what the perfect dad would do, which is, console me after the disappointment. But what he didn't understand is I'm beyond disappointment now. You can't hurt me with that anymore. So we pull into the recruiting station. I walk in, tell him who I am, tell him what I want to know. He pulls out this list. He looks down the list. And he just looks up at me and casually and says, congratulations, Mr. Mann, you made it. You got a scholarship. And he shakes my hand. And I walk out to the car, and my father was like, so did they have it? And I'm like, yeah, they had it. And he immediately went into perfect dad. Oh, don't worry about it, son. You only got a couple years left. And I'm like, Daddy, what are you talking about? I did it. I made it. And we go home. And when Mom gets home, I'm sorry. When Mom gets home, I said, guess what? She says, what, sweetie? I said, I did it. She couldn't speak for 5 minutes. Silence. She just went like this. Tears came. She couldn't speak for 5 minutes. Needless to say, that was one of my best days ever. So I moved beyond that. We go to school, I get the whole thing worked out, and I end up at the University of South Carolina. I do really well, go into the Marine Corps. Of course, I was college material. I blew the doors off. I was so freaking amped up and ramped up and ready to go when I got there. I tried to take 25 hours worth of credit, and the guidance counselor had to make me not do it. They should have let me do it because I could have did it. I pulled out a piece of paper and showed them how I could do it. I was unstoppable by then. I've been so denied. Anyway, I did really well. Went through that whole thing. Decided to switch branch, go into officers, Marine Corps as an officer, and along the way, as an officer in the Marine Corps, I decide that that's not what I want to do. I want to get out and take corporate America by storm. So I do that. And I ended up getting in sales and doing really well. By now, motivation is just, I'm a motivated person. I'm just amped. I'm just amped. Because I did it. I overcame some enormous odds. And in my mind, it would never be that bad again. And if I could do that, guess what? I could do anything. That's the way I looked at it. And that posture was very, very empowering. Very, very empowering. So let me set up my final worst day, because I only told you about 2 days. So the other people have heard a little bit about this day, but let me give you, people that know about this day, let me give you some broader perspective. So now I did really well in corporate America. Now I'm in software startups. I'm in a startup. I'm really at the top of the startup, and I'm one of the executives in this startup. And let me give you some perspective, though. So let me help you understand my mental state so you understand the gravity of my 3rd day. So I hope you can see that. Yeah, this is just a line. Let's imagine that that's like the water level, okay? And that's where your finances, let me see, yeah, okay, yeah. That's where your finances and your expenses meet, where everything balances out. So I did really well in corporate America. I was in sales, made a lot of money. So there was a time where I was about here. I was way above means. Way above my level, right? So, and, because I was so high up there, and because I was doing so well, and this was right at the very beginning where the dot-com bubble was in full effect. I was in a startup company. I knew I was going to be a dot-com millionaire. After all, I was the unstoppable kid, right? I was the unstoppable man. I could do anything. I could do magic. I'll pull a rabbit out of any hat, right? I'll figure it out. So I took a massive pay cut. I was almost working for nothing. I pulled a massive pay cut, and which means it was okay. So I wasn't, I even bartered getting my commission for stock. I wanted more stock because that's how you can make money in dot-com companies. So obviously my savings and my income is not, you know how it is. You're spending, and then all of a sudden the dot-com bubble burst, and nobody's buying any software any place, and it continues to crash down here. And the next thing you know, you do this for a couple of years. The next thing you know, I'm like everybody else, paycheck to paycheck, barely getting by. And had rental property, had the house I was in, and then life being what it is. I'm giving you a short version. The renter skips town without telling me he's skipping town, so I'm thinking maybe he's traveling or whatever. And then when I realize he's gone, I'm a couple of months into paying 2 mortgages, so now I'm underwater, right? Things don't meet anymore. And then I realize he's not coming back. And then if you've ever been in a startup, you know how tough that is. So not only do I have not any, the commissions and the salary is way not enough for me to make ends meet, we miss payroll. 4 of them. So now I find myself way down here below the water level. I need you to understand where that is. So now my phone's ringing off the hook. Creditors calling, bill collectors calling. And I'm just not, I'm there. I mean, a lot of people, I know how people feel out there now, because believe me, there. Lights, juggling, bills, can't pay everything. I'm just trying to figure it out. In fact, let me put you in this frame of mind. So I remember this company was, we had this really big meeting with Northrop Grumman, big defense contractor. We were going to try to partner with them to go do some stuff with the Pentagon. This was a huge meeting, maybe to turn the company around and give me some oxygen. I called that being 20,000 leagues under the sea. I was so far under the water, all I needed was some oxygen, some air. But because of all that other stuff I'd been through, I was still fighting forward, because that's who I was. And I'm walking down the hallway to this meeting, literally, because I forgot to cut my cell phone off. I'm literally walking down the passageway, and my phone rings, and it's my wife and my daughter, who was at the time maybe less than 1. She was just barely a little thing, and she calls and says, "Hey, I just want to let you know we don't have any lights. Lights were out. I guess I didn't juggle them well enough. Lights are out." So I said, hey, I assessed my situation, realized I can't cut the lights on now. Shoot, I don't know how I'm going to even cut them back on. So I go into this meeting. Anyway, knock it out of the park. Knock it out of the park. And that becomes the meeting that eventually started to chain reactions that turned some things around. But I mean, I was in a really bad place. I mean, there was times where I was trying to go on a sales call. I didn't know if I would have enough gas to get back home from the sales call, because I did get a paycheck every now and then, but it wasn't enough money to do everything. So there was a time where I did the sales call, and at that time I didn't know if I was going to make it back. I made it back on fumes. I couldn't move the car until the 15th rolled around, and I got enough money to put some gas into the tank. I remember it was so bad one time my thermostat broke in my car, and I could only drive like 10 miles at a time before it would overheat, and I'd have to pull over on the side of the road, literally, and sit there for 15 minutes. so it would cool back down enough for me to drive another 10 minutes before it would overheat. I had to go through that. I was just doing what I had to do to make it, right? And I remember one day it was so bad, it was pouring down rain. I'm in this car. I'm doing this 10 miles at a time thing. And I just sit there on the side of the road and I just bust out laughing. If you've ever seen, I'll tell you what I felt like, because I bust out laughing at my circumstances. Here I am on the side of the road, grown man, have done all that stuff, raining down, got to pull over on the side of the road every now and then. And I bust out, and I looked out at the rainy clouds, and I was like, is this all you got? Is this all you got? I was just pouring down laughing to myself. I'm sure people driving around thought that I'd lost my mind, and who knows, maybe I did lose a little bit of it. I'm saying, you know, the rain cools the car down faster. Pull on me, kind of thing. Still just fired up trying to make it happen. Well, anyway, long story short, I made it home. But anyway, this was where I was. Oh, by the way, for people that know my motivational videos that I do weekly, this is when I started doing them. Down here. Well, you know, most people look at that optimistic. If you go back and look at some of the early videos, as optimistic as I am and try to encourage other people to be optimistic, I was kind of doing that because I needed to make sure that I believed in what I believed in. I started that mission down here, 20,000 leagues underwater. And this is when I got a phone call. Conference call I've been having every day, all the time. Corporate executives got everything in this company. Now you understand what I mean by have everything in this company. Trying to figure it out, trying to make things happen. And then I have this conference call with a new executive that we happen to bring in as my boss. I bring him in as my boss, and he turns out to be not the best guy. And anyway, in 20 minutes on a conference call, I realized that this guy is going to ruin everything. He's going to kill this company, and I got everything in this company. Crap, I can't believe it. I was so shattered by that, you know, 4 hours after that call, I'm sitting at the dinner table, and I get up, my eyes just well up with water out of nowhere. So frustrated and pissed off at just everything again. That seems to be a theme with me, man. And I walk into my office and I just stand there in the dark and I say, you know what? How did I end up here? After all of that stuff I'd been through, after all of that stuff, how did I end up here? And then I said, well, you know, what am I going to do about it? And that's when I said, oh, fine. I'm going to go find a way to turn this company around. Somehow, if I have to use freaking magic to do it, I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to find a way to have a backup plan, get something else going. And that's when I committed to direct selling network marketing company, because I needed to have a backup plan. And now you know what could I afford to join that company when I joined? Of course not. I couldn't even make the bill. I couldn't even pay all my bills. Could I afford to go to their conferences and training? No. How did I go? Just didn't pay something. Couldn't pay them anyway. And so you know, so I'm doing this thing, I'm growing, I'm doing this thing, I'm making bills, and obviously the company turned around. That Pentagon meeting did do the deal. That company started rapidly turning around, things started to get a little bit better, companies start coming in and we get paid, things are working, and this little part-time venture is working too, it's starting to grow, and suddenly I'm making a couple $100s a month, and suddenly I realized that that's going to be my ticket long term, and then that became a priority with me. No matter what I couldn't pay, you know, they would have to take the car before I couldn't not keep that business going, because that business, I thought, over time would keep me from ever coming back here, because I ate it where I was now, 20,000 leads under the sea. So this goes on, this goes on, this goes on. I'm doing this thing. And now you understand. And it grows and grows and grows. And finally, you know, things turn really around with this company. And I eventually go from this company to another startup company. That company got acquired by a big billion-dollar company. Things are going really well. By now, both things are going really well. Company's going well. I'm making finally real income again and commissions and all that stuff. And I got this six-figure income from this part-time venture thing now. I'm fast-forwarding it. And I'm just rocking them. Things are feeling really good. So now, you know, when people ask me, why am I such a big fan of this industry? Why am I so committed to these companies like this? Why do I think that everybody should look into these type of companies? That's why. Because it was the ladder I could use to climb out of this situation. I was obviously motivated enough, but motivation couldn't get me there on a regular salary in a regular company with all the politics and all that stuff. I needed something that I could just go find a way to do it that was a meritocracy. That, you know, I could just figure out a way to make it happen. And if I could make it worth it, it would be worth it. And that's what I did. So now, that's what allowed me to finally, because you know, I'm making these, I got two six-figure incomes now, six-figure income job, six-figure income business, and people were wondering, why do I have the job? Well, because I actually like my job, and having two six-figure incomes, well, that's cool too. And then finally got to the point where it didn't make sense for me to have them, you know, to not, just do the business full time and let the job go. So I quit my job. And that was 3.5 years ago when I became independent. But so now for those of you that see, a lot of people are tuned in, as maybe some old timers that remember when I finally quit my job, and I'm on a conference call. So I'm in Atlanta. Because I still had some legacy meetings. Once I quit, I still honored some business meetings that I'd scheduled. So I'm in Atlanta on a business meeting, and I'm at a business dinner at a restaurant with tables outside, and time for a conference call with this team, my marketing team that I built. And I excused myself from the table, and I kind of just walked out and kind of to the parking lot, still outside. They were kind of in the distance a little bit. And I'm telling everybody, I finally did it. I quit my job. I did this stuff. I quit my job. I did it. And everybody was all celebrating. I start talking about how I feel. And then I just get jacked up and excited. And I start yelling on the phone, I'm a free man now. I'm a free. If you can imagine, I'm in Georgia. Come on, folks. It's funny, right? The people must have been looking at me, thought I had lost my mind. But I did it. And those were the three things. Those were the three things that really shaped who I am now. So I look back at those 3 days, those really 3 bad days, right? There's no way possible I could have had the fortitude or the DNA, the backbone to turn my 3rd bad day into a motivational moment to go and do something about it and make something happen, had I not had those first 2 really bad days and went through that whole gauntlet, that whole proving ground to determine who I, often you don't know how strong you are until you pushed up against the wall where you have to fight. And I'd done that. So I knew what I could do, and I knew how strong I could be. And, but all 3 of these things were hypercritical for me to finally end up where I am now, which I gotta tell you, man, I think I'm where I am supposed to be. I'm doing stuff I love. I'm talking about people I love. That little video that I kind of started as reinforcement, as a public declaration of what I really believe about being positive and mindset and keeping my eye on focus and all that stuff. I believed in it. Yeah, that stuff. I now speak around that. I'm known by that. And a lot of people think I'm a motivational speaker. I'm not. I'm just motivated when I speak. I've never called myself a motivational speaker, but now you might understand why I might have just a tinge of motivation woven into my personality. Do people out there, the underdogs out there, do I feel a connection with them? Absolutely I do. We're kin. Absolutely I feel a connection with underdogs. Do movies that I watch where people overcome tremendous odds, do they make me cry? Every single time. Absolutely they do. Absolutely they do. Do I love to see people overcome things, odds that they thought they never could? I'm addicted to that. That is my crack cocaine. I am addicted to that, which is why I like doing what I do now, because I get to see and experience that more so than in other industries that I might be able to do that. So, folks, this is the deal. Thank you. I hope you got something out of this. I mean, very few people know all of those stories. In fact, I never even told my parents where I was on that 3rd day, that 3rd worst day, because I couldn't take the liability of having them give me the voice of reason. I didn't want to tell the people I love most no, because I would not have quit my pursuit. I would not have gotten a government job or whatever they were going to tell me to do that was more safe. I was not designed to be safe. That wasn't who I was. That would have killed me. So I couldn't even afford to tell them, and plus my mom would have just wrote a check and bailed me out, and I couldn't have done that. Not after I could do it. I knew I could do it. I'd proven that. I just needed to figure it out. So to this day, she doesn't know that story. She doesn't know most of the stories I just shared with you, because we just got in this weird place where I couldn't tell her, and I can't tell her now because I feel weird about not having tell her because I wasn't, all of that stuff. But anyway, I hope you got something out of this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Those were 3 of my worst days. They're right up there with the worst days of my life in 45 years. But I will tell you this. Had I not had those worst days, I wouldn't be at a place now where I can tell you those stories and smile about it. What started off as struggle in each and every angle completely turned into celebration, liberation, empowerment. So some of you may have wondered what the heck does apples have to do with any of this, and those of you know I like to end with this little metaphor because this is how I think things come. I think there are things about life that you know, that are tangible things you know, like an apple in your hand. But once you start to commit and once you start to define what you want in this world, you know, it may be divided into other things that you can kind of get a hint like, and these are like seeds in that apple, and you can kind of see that they're there and you know what potential they have, sort of. You think you know, but you don't really know. All you know is that what you can personally do about it, and what you can personally do about it is plant them. Plant them and let the water, let things happen. But what you cannot know, you can never know, is what will sprout from those seeds. How many trees will sprout from those seeds, and then you cannot predict in your wildest imagination how many apples will then come from those trees, and then how many seeds will come from those apples, and then how many the trees will come from those seeds, on and on. You become a wave of possibility if you're willing to accept it. And it was truly my very first worst day that set me up for the most powerful things that have ever entered my life, starting with what I now call the voice of God that spoke to me that night in that bed in that rack and told me to pull out a piece of yellow pad and do it my damn self. I would have never been prepared to do that had I not been introduced to what I perceived to be the worst day in my life. I'm tired now. Very rare I even tell all those stories back to back, and you can see they still move me all over the place. Sometimes they feel a little bit like open wounds, but you know, I feel empowered when I come out of it because damn it, I did it. Excuse me, I did it though. So thanks guys. Hopefully you find something about this. I'm going to make a post at some point in my Facebook page so that you can comment. And I don't need you to make like a comment like this was great or anything like that. The contest is just that you make comments that, hey, this was a show out there. So I don't exactly know how the quickest way to tell you to get to the fan page for comment 5. That's where you have to make the comment. But I'll post it in my Facebook page. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully if you find yourself in a dark tunnel one day, you just remember that I've been, you know, other people around the world have been there, and you might just find that little bit of reason where you can be unreasonable and you can become the light you need to see in the tunnel that you stand in. And once you can see in that tunnel, you will become unstoppable, my friends. God bless you all. Good night.